It's Oklahoma Archery. Everything archery based out of Oklahoma for Oklahomans. Let's get it started. Hello, everybody. I'm David Bosca.
I'm Neil Cooley.
And I am Josh Smith from RamRods Archery.
We've got a special guest here today. A few weeks back, month and a half back, I don't even know when it was. I have been studying. Y'all guys know me enough to where I study and I do tests and I check things and I do tests, and I just had to dive off. These RamRods stabilizers had me by the tail, and I had to get some. And so I reached out and I grabbed a big old pot full of them. Told the wife I bought myself a birthday present, and her first answer was, "What bow did you buy?" And I said, "No, I bought stabilizers." But
I'll tag on just to the end of it. I shot one of Dave's bars, front bar only. Was it a couple weeks back? Didn't even put the back bar on. Shot just the front bar, 3 arrows, and I drove home. And I think I had them in my cart before I hit the driveway. So it was a pretty cool experience shooting these things for the first time. So we want to give you a chance to tell everybody about them.
Yeah, well, I'm glad they made a good first impression. And, I always tell people I'm not necessarily a great salesperson, but if you make a good enough product and you get people to try it, the product can usually sell itself pretty well. So I'm glad the product's out there doing its job for me.
It is. Yeah, say, tell us a little bit about you and how you got started with RamRods Archery.
Yeah, so I'm a California boy, born and raised in Southern California. Started shooting when I was 13 years old. I got really into it really quick. I ended up competing nationally at a young age. And then when I was 15, I moved to our U.S. Olympic Training Center to be part of a Olympic hopeful program. Trained there for 5 years with our national team. I was on the junior national team for several years, competed a lot nationally and internationally during that time. And then when the time came for me to move on from competing, myself and a couple other archers who I used to train with had an idea to start to make some archery products that would have better met the needs we had when we were shooting. We kind of felt like, based on our experience and actual usage and testing of equipment, there were things that didn't exist that could make the experience a little bit better. One of the biggest places we felt there could have been some improvements was competing in the wind. Anyone who shot a bow outdoors in the wind knows how frustrating it can be when you know there's a certain quality of shot you're capable of making, and the conditions are just not cooperating with you and pushing you around, making it more difficult to shoot in the way that you trained to do and that you know you can do and you're striving for every time. A lot of the equipment we used at the time, the stabilizers were pretty large diameter. And that thing kind of turns into a sail when you make it 30 inches long and put a bunch of weights on the end. So in the beginning, a lot of what we were trying to do was make the bars thinner and more wind efficient. And then over time, started to add in more concerns and technology around vibration damping, around making the aim and hold better, and even trying different geometries and damping materials that hadn't been used in the industry before to try to push the technology further, so that today's archers could have the equipment that we wanted when we were competing.
So you say vibration dampening, stiffer, holds better. You're actually really talking about the carbon and the things inside the bars itself.
That's exactly right. So because the real estate outside of the bar is so valuable and so prone to being affected by the wind, we're trying to do as much of the performance improvement as possible with the bar itself and with what's inside. We don't want to have to put a lot of additional dampers or devices on the outside to help. We want to do it all inside. So inside the bar, we have 2 main technologies that we use that make a big difference. The first one is called VibroCore. And VibroCore is the internal damping system that every single product we make has, every single stabilizer. And what the VibroCore is it's a rubber fill that goes through the entire length of the stabilizer. And it is a very light material that does a good job of removing a relatively wide frequency of vibration without adding a lot of mass weight and adding no no material outside of the bar subject to the wind or catching on something or breaking down. And then if people want to go even further and go a little crazier, we have something that's called tungsten damping. Now, the tungsten damping is going to make the bar a little more front heavy. And what we're doing is we're adding 3 ounces of tungsten powder on the inside of the bar on the distal end. So that is by the weight. So you are making the bar heavier, which initially some people get a little freaked out by that. But you got to remember, we're going to put some weights on the end of the bar anyway. So let's have that weight be wind efficient. It's going to help with your front of center. And you're getting a very, very noticeable and unique vibration damping effect.
Okay, good. That explains that part. What about the connections? Is it as important as just any connection works, or does your aluminum, does it need to fit just right?
Well, I would say to a certain extent, thankfully for people's archery budgets, a lot of the mounting accessories can be fairly universal to a certain extent. We're using fairly similar sizes, and almost everything is using the same threads. However, you do want to be careful that you're using parts that are using a higher grade of aluminum, if at all possible. We use 70-75 aluminum for every aluminum part we make. It's a little more durable, it's a little more rigid, and gives you a little more peace of mind that the part's going to perform well and also last over a longer period of time. The big thing you want to look out for that I don't think enough people pay attention to is making sure that all of your connecting faces, whether that's an extension, a quick disconnect, a V-bar mount, that you're not losing any overlap between the diameter of the base cap of the stabilizer and that connection. If you have like our B stabilizer or our vector stabilizer that has a pretty solid connecting surface with good area to mount up against one of our quick disconnects, but you put it against something real thin or small, and you're losing some of that edge of that circle, you're missing out on a little bit of that stiffness benefit that the carbon in the cap is providing you.
So it's better to have the connection a little bit larger than what the rod is versus the other way around.
You'd like your connection points to be as big or potentially just a hair bigger is fine.
Okay.
There's no magic to having it be bigger, but at least the same size.
Okay.
And we have started to make some different stabilizer bushing washers to help if you're going to connect the bar directly into the riser maybe, and you're not using a quick disconnect on the front, to try to get a little more leverage out of that connection and maximize that interface. So that's a little bit of a newer product. We're still kind of testing and coming out with some new things there, but we do have some for the Hoyt bows that are already on the market, and they've been pretty well received so far.
I remember when I went in to your site and was scanning around, trying to figure out what I wanted, what I needed more than anything else. You've got a good variety, and not all of it's compound, not all of it's recurve. And let me just say this, saying recurve, I did see a lot of the bars at the Olympics being used. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. We had it's the most athletes we've ever had competing with the products at the Olympics in Paris this year. I believe we had 31 athletes there that were sponsored and using the product. And the 2 bronze team medals won by the Mexican women's team and the Turkish men's team. All 3 athletes on both teams were sponsored by our company and using the product. So that was pretty exciting, and that means we're now 3 Olympics in a row where we've had an athlete competing there and they brought home some hardware. So we're on a good train. No Olympic gold medal this year, but you can't have that every year. That's a little bit of a tough bet.
Well, that's really good.
I'll say those camera angles had some fantastic exposure for the little end caps with the logo on them right there. His camera's pointing right up back at them. Like,
absolutely. We definitely considered how things were going to show up on camera when we were designing the rods those athletes were going to use to make sure that the logo shows up and they look good.
Would you walk everybody through, because I know we've got some people that shoot recurve here. I would imagine most of our audience is compound shooters, if I had to guess. Could you walk them through real quick what the different models of stabilizer are?
Sure, we can do that. So first we'll kind of cover the premium line, and then I'll explain where the intermediate and economy lines kind of fit in with different categories of shooter. So the Ultra V4, the Vector, and the Beast. Those are our three premium tier products, and no one is better than another. They're just designed for different people. They're all at the top, right? So the Ultra V4 is our weakest, but also our thinnest stabilizer. That one's going to be almost exclusively for a recurve shooter. Then the Vector, we step up the diameter just a little bit, and that makes it significantly stiffer, making it suitable for a lot of recurve and a lot of compound shooters. It's the product that fits the most amount of archers because it's just so dang flexible. It kind of sits right in the middle, and it has a nice overlap with both sides. And then lastly, we have the Beast, which steps up a little bit larger in diameter again and is incredibly stiff. And that one, we have not yet found a recurve shooter who needs that. That's been exclusively our compound bar. So if you only are shooting recurve and you're keeping things very lightweight, then you're going to want the Ultra V4. If you're shooting compound or recurve, but you're relatively in the middle in terms of weight used on the long rod, let's say maybe you're between 6 up to 20, 25 ounces. But regardless of bow type, you're going to be just fine with the Vector. And if you're a compound shooter that really wants things locked down, or you have a very aggressive bow that you need to tame, maybe you're putting 20, 30, even more ounces of weight on your long rod, then the Beast is going to be that final step up. That essentially, I mean, the thing has unlimited weight capacity. We've got one gentleman who is shooting in the World Cups with over 50 ounces on his Beast long rod, and it can handle it.
What's your lengths? What's your standard lengths?
Yeah, so for the long rods, we have 27, 30, and 33. My recommendation is, unless you've shot a lot and you already know exactly what length you want, just shoot the 30. It's definitely very close to the peak of the bell curve for most shooters. And for some people, is a 29 or 31, or maybe you are a 33. These little variances, you're never going to be held back by just going with the 30 and using that until you've shot for quite a long time and you really know yourself and your setup, that you might say, oh, I really do need a 27, or I really do need a 30. And you can always make a tiny length adjustment by adding like a 1-inch extension to your bar. We make extensions in 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 inches. We have them in aluminum. We have them in carbon. So there's some ability to play around a little bit with length if you just want to add or remove a little bit without having to buy a whole new bar.
Back bars were 12, 13 and a half, and 15?
Yes, and we do have the 10-inch bar available just with the Beast, because we did have some demand for that.
And the internal tungsten weighting is also available on the back bars.
It's available on all 3 rods in the premium series, in the front bars and the back bars. And some people do ask, do I need it in both, or is it only better in one versus the other? Ideally, if you can, it's best to have it in both your front and your back bar. If you had to choose one for budget reasons or for just overall weight capacity limitations, it has a little bit more impact on the front. So I would prioritize the front if you had to choose between the two.
That's what I did. I ended up, when I ordered mine, I was half thinking of going back and trying V-bars again, Compound World. And I thought, you know, I'm just going to go ahead and get, because I know, let's say I'm right-handed. My right side is always lighter than my left side when I get it set up. So I thought, well, I'm going to get the tungsten in on the left. That'll allow less weight on the outside for wind, and I'll just go with the regular bar on the right side. And I got the tungsten in on the front, and we got it in. I thought, well, there's 2 15-inch tungsten bars in here and a 15-inch regular bar. I went back and looked at it, and sure enough, I added 2 of them to the cart and didn't realize it. So, hey, that means I got a spare.
Well, we can take that one back and get you something.
Nope. More than likely I'll use it somewhere down the road. Right. I'm not worried about that. I was just saying, well, it happens. But one thing I wanted to bring up is for folks that aren't sure as to what bar, what length, or I don't remember if it said anything about length. I think it was more the type of bars. You had a neat little tool on the website I forget the questions it asks, but it helps narrow down or lead them to the right set of bars needed.
Yeah, so we do have a stabilizer fitting quiz that kind of matches you up to the product that's going to fit you best, which is definitely something we need. We have way too many options. If you're newer to the sport, if you're newer to our company, it can be very confusing. I actually just revamped that quiz about a week ago, so there's actually a new one on there. The old quiz just gave you one output. The new one will actually tell you your top three, and it'll tell you which one fits you best. But it also gives you like a second and third option if you just want to kind of compare like which one maybe, I was kind of leaning towards this one. It says the Vector. I kind of wanted the Beast. It says the Beast is my number 2. I can kind of see where it said I matched and where it said I didn't quite match that product. But yeah, well, what the tool is really doing is it's matching you based on your bow type. It's matching you based on your experience level. Most importantly, the amount of mass weight that's going to go on the end of your long stabilizer. That's really what chooses what's going to work or not work for you. And then we have a little bit of a tiebreaker in there based on if someone is prioritizing as much wind efficiency as possible, or if they're prioritizing as much stiffness as possible. And if we're on the topic of kind of making stabilizer selections, I do want to tell everyone a couple things about making those trade-offs, because I think it's important. I think some people get this wrong. A lot of times athletes, because we understand that a stiff stabilizer can hold better, we're always chasing like the stiffest thing possible. I think too many archers fall into this trap, as well as the trap of just trying to shoot as much mass weight as they can handle. Reality is, if you go too stiff, that's just as bad as going too weak. Something that's too stiff for you can start to feel harsh, more resonant, kind of angry and aggressive, and leave some vibration in your elbow or in your bow. It's not going to feel that great. We can run into the same problems, but on the other side of the spectrum, if we go too weak, where maybe the bar is kind of enhancing or magnifying the little micro movements that we make while we aim, it may feel a little floppy or loose or just uncontrolled during the execution. So it's not so much that we're trying to get the stiffest or the weakest thing. We're just trying to match you to the right product that's going to feel good when you're shooting. So it's not always about going the stiffest thing. It's not always about going the thinnest thing. We're just trying to find the right fit for you.
I've been guilty in the past of elbow tuning my stabilizers. I'd shoot a couple hundred arrows, and if it starts pinging in my elbow, I've never known if it was too stiff a bar or too weak. I just know it feels like a little tennis elbow on the left side, me being right-handed. So it's like, I really didn't like those bars as much as I thought. After a couple of hundred arrows, you kind of feel it right in the right on the crease of it there. Just
absolutely, and that's going to take you back from training as much as you like to and shooting your best. So we never want to see athletes not shooting because of elbow pain.
I was going to say, what are you doing? I know we're not. I don't want to expect anything earth-shattering here, but how did you come up with your tapered rod? What testing did you do? You said you started with a couple other athletes and you had these ideas in your head, but what made you come up with where you at right now? I mean,
yeah. So we, as a small company and a company that's pretty agile, we're always more concerned about kind of changing quickly and making better products rather than just making one thing and then trying to sell it for a long time to milk money out of it. So especially in the early days of the company, we were changing things nonstop. And we ended up kind of settling on 2 products. One was the original version of our Ultra, and the other one is a discontinued product called the Matterhorn. So they were both a parallel wall, and they were both the same exact stabilizer, but one was at a 1/2 inch diameter, one was at a 0.625, so a little larger. And they both had really awesome performance characteristics, but they both had some weaknesses. The Ultra didn't have the stiffness to really hold up to compound use. And although the Matterhorn was really stiff and felt good, it was a little bit less wind efficient. And so a lot of the recurve shooters kind of shied away from it. And what we challenged ourselves was, can we make something that basically gives you the best of both worlds without sacrificing any of the pros that they have? So in looking at kind of where the material is offering you the most value or where material is actually hurting you, we kind of noticed that, well, at the proximal end where the rod is attaching to the bow, that's where you have the most mechanical stress. So that's where it needs the reinforcement to feel rigid. But at the distal end where your weight stack is, all the way out there on the end in the wind, you don't need it to be that stiff because it has less stress, and you also don't want too much material there because the wind has more leverage to push the further you go away from the pivot point. So putting those two ideas together, we said, well, let's make it thin where it should be thin, and let's make it thick where it should be thick, and see what happens. And it took quite a bit of trial and error, and we had to find a better carbon manufacturer that could make completely custom tubes to our specifications and would work with us on doing quite a few prototypes to get it right. Because there was a big risk that we were concerned if you didn't get the taper ratio right, it could end up feeling worse, or it might feel a little disconcerting compared to what people are used to out of a parallel wall stabilizer. We eventually settled on the design that we're selling today in the factory, which did give athletes the best of both. They could have the wind efficiency and they could have the stiffness. The thing that we didn't predict that actually ended up being a really nice side effect was because your base is stiffer and your tip is weaker, the geometry that we're laying up that carbon in the first place is naturally moving vibration forward away from the archer and letting very little of that resonancy come back to you. And then on top of that, when you put that tungsten chamber at the very distal end where it has the most room to move, you're getting more activation of those little tungsten particles, getting them to move around, and it's even enhancing that vibration damping further than it would if you put it in a parallel tube. So all around, it was a big win for us and kind of worked out. We were a little lucky and we had a little bit of a good idea, I guess.
For those that aren't stabilizer geeks, what he's trying to say is it works.
Yes, sir.
It feels good and it works. I mean, yeah. I've been trying to tell people about it for the past couple of weeks. And how do you say the gentleman's name? Is it Steve Weiler? Is it Widgler?
Weiler.
Weiler,
yeah.
I don't know who this guy is or how he came up with throwing tungsten in the end of them, but it's the difference in like shooting a rifle and then shooting one with a suppressor on it is the best way I can describe it. Like you don't feel nearly the vibration and you're running less weight on the bow. So I think before I switched over, I was 15 on the front, maybe 23, 24 on the back. And when I switched over, I think I'm 8 on the front and like 20, 21 on the back, maybe 22. So I'm at least 2 or 3 ounces lighter on each end of the bar, but it feels like it's like there's more there. It just,
and that's because it's inside still. You still got the weight there. You got to calculate that in to your end use. And that's what I did. I had my 27 bars and I put them on a grain scale, or not a grain scale, but a gram scale. And I was weighing everything. And then I ended up putting them on a postal scale so I could get it down to ounces. And I weighed them out and I got 3rd ounce weights here. And I had it down to what I wanted and I put them on. And I still was like, something's not right. And it had to do with the location in the bar, the way it changed with, I'm not sure how far up it is, but let's say it's 3 inches. It changed the pivot point in my hand, my palm, to where when I was pushing, with it all out on the end, it would pull it down and pull it into my hand more, to where with it up in the bar, it was just relaxing it. And it might've been a 1/2 inch higher up into my palm on my push, or yeah, you know what I'm saying there. So the location of it made all the difference in the world for me.
Torque tuned it.
Back and forth, I guess.
Yeah.
But
that's the way to look at it.
Yeah. And the first shot, you realize it, the first shot, you feel it.
Don't let Dave in the factory. He'll have that tungsten on a worm drive, having going all the way through that bar up and down. Don't give him the keys. Don't let him in. Y'all are out in California, right? That's the long way for him to drive. But tell him about the I don't know the name of them exactly, but the 4 ounce powder weights with the
Sure.
I keep calling them shaker weights, but only because I can feel them moving in my hand.
I know that's a good nickname for them. So at the very beginning stages of product development in the company, we wanted to make something for damping that was unique. There was a lot of rubber dampers out there. There's a lot of options, but we had a concern about the rubber damper because, especially as you start to add more mass weight to it, you can get a little bit of, well, you're going to get a little bit of decoupling. That's how they work. They decouple the mass weight of your steel weights from the rod itself, and that creates a damping effect. Feels great, and as long as you don't overdo it, rubber dampers are awesome. But there is theoretically would be an advantage if your damper did not decouple the weight from the rest of the bow. So we wanted to find a way to reduce vibration with a weight that didn't do any decoupling. And that is where the tungsten damping weight was designed around. And we actually have a patent on the tungsten damping weight, which was the same technology that we used in the bars later on. And going back to your earlier comment about Steve Weiler, he loved the tungsten damping weight, but he wanted it in the bar. He's kind of where that whole idea came from, which is why we kind of made it his signature thing. So after a while of testing, we were able to take the same idea as that weight and put it into the bar. But the good news is if you already have stabilizers you love and you don't want to buy new ones, but you're feeling like you're missing out because you're hearing us talk about this tungsten damping thing, we do sell a 4-ounce weight that does virtually the same thing as the internal tungsten damping. It's a tiny bit less effective because it's not directly in contact with the carbon, but it gets you 80-90% of the benefit for very cheap. You can throw it on any bar in the world and you're in the tungsten damping game.
And I bought weights to equal each one of them. So I've got two. Well, I've got the internal tungsten, and I've got 2 on the front. I've got 4 on that back. I just went whole hog with it. I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm old. I need all the help I can get.
I was just desperate. There was no hope for me other than that. So you guys definitely got me excited rolling into indoor season. I've very traditionally been a don't go spend money. It's not going to make you better. It's between your ears. You need to shoot your bow in practice. That's always been what I've kind of preached at people. But this is kind of the exception to that. I mean, everything I said about don't go spend a bunch of money on the new fancy thing, we're done with that. We're out the door on that one. I just think that it was such a noticeable difference from, and I've shot every bar out there. I've shot Shrewds and Doinkers and Dead Centers and Easton Contours and AAEs. And what did you shoot early on? You said you started competing at a young age. What was the cool stabilizer back then?
We were mostly shooting Doinker and Bee Stinger. Those were kind of the 2 brands popular in our space. You see a little bit of the win-win stuff, but for the most part, there weren't that many options around in the premium stabilizer market. It's been more so, I would say, in the last 10 years, we've seen a lot more companies come out with some more unique products and try to push beyond, it's literally an empty carbon tube and 2 caps. It hasn't been that long that we've actually been putting more effort into designing things to help the archers more. And like you said, yes, at the end of the day, where the arrow lands on the target, that is up to the archer. But our goal is to make equipment that makes it easier to shoot your best, and that regardless of what level you're shooting at, this equipment is going to make shooting more enjoyable, right? There's no rule against having more fun and a better shooting experience. You got to understand it's not going to buy you the point, but it makes it a better experience. It makes it easier to shoot your best. And at the end of the day, most of us aren't making a living from shooting our bow. We just want to have a good time.
That's right. Do you plan on doing anything in the hunting world down the road?
Definitely. We do have one hunting stabilizer. It's called the Wraith. It uses a modified version of the tungsten damping powder that's a bit lighter. We have a little less material because we do know that hunters can be a lot more concerned about hiking around with that mass weight and having more stuff they got to pack in and out of wherever they're going. But that does have the vibro core, and we call it metallic core. It's a lighter version of vibro core that has iron and tungsten. And that product has done pretty well. It uses basically everything we learned from the target archery world and puts it into something that looks like a hunting bar. But we understand that athletes that are hunting need to be every bit as accurate as athletes that are competing on a target course. So we want to make sure that they have access to the same technology as target archers.
When I first grabbed those tungsten end weights and I shook them, I could feel it. It brought back an old stabilizer I had years ago back in the 90s. It was called a Vibracheck, and it had a gel in it. And in the gel, well, I don't know about this one, but there was a one locally that was made that had put gel in it, and they would put birdshot inside the gel to move with it. And when I felt that, that was something that I remembered. But I pick up a can of aftershave, or I mean, a can of shaving cream now, and I shake it, and I think of, well, that's the old stabilizer.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been some pretty cool, to varying degrees of success, cool attempts at putting different things inside the bar to help with vibration damping, help you hold better, help make the bow feel better. And I love it. I'd like to see more companies make cool stuff that helps archers and takes different approaches to the same goal and gives people the option to find whichever version of that fits them best.
Yeah.
This one's working for me because a year ago I had one of my memories pop up where Dave had run 3/3 ounces in between every 1 ounce, and his back bar was about 27 inches long with these weights stacked, and it really did distribute the weight this way. You could play with it to where it would kind of make your bow hold a little bit better. And I don't know how long you chased that around for a couple months. I shot it all the way through indoor season, and it just looked, I mean, it was 16 inches long and neon purple. It was goofy looking. So I like the same tungsten theory as putting that weight different places further back just to kind of get a different reaction out of them, but it looks a lot cooler. I was up at Lancaster with it, and everybody looked at that thing like, is this guy serious? I was like, yeah, I'm running an 8-inch back bar with 18 inches of 1/3 ounce weights on it. It was, I'll send you a picture of it later. It was goofy looking, but
it
shot good.
Hey, if it works, it works. You can't argue with performance.
And that's exactly what it was. I think I had an 18-inch back bar, and I don't even remember how much weights. It was 20 ounces or so. So it was really back there, and it was just distributed throughout all of it. It's all it was doing. And I could play with the solid 1 ounce ones and move them around the 1/3 ounce. And yeah, it actually changed the way the things held. So anyway, that's the days gone by.
It just goes to be one of those hard lessons. Like we met a guy after the Rumble 2 years ago. Tyson Klein's a pro shooter out of Kansas, and he went to Vegas and switched all his stainless weights over to tungsten and shortened them and just couldn't get it figured out and had changed it last minute. And somebody told him, they're like, you put your old ones back on, see if your bow will shoot. And he put the same amount of ounces on his bar, but it was much, much longer. And it just changed the pivot point of how that tune was. It'll change all that minor stuff. Telling people to go spend good money on stabilizers is the easiest thing from a coaching standpoint, because you still have to execute the shot. It might hold better, but your benefits are coming as that energy disperses through the bow. And it's like every year they're bringing a faster bow out, a more powerful bow. And it's like they're just doing more and more. And the stabilizer companies are having to keep up and make new innovations to try to combat this, because the bows are just getting crazy. I mean, the speeds out of them, the power, the kinetic energy, it's got to be like kind of, keeping up with the Joneses.
Let me ask you one quick question. Colors. Do you ever plan on coming out with colored rods, or at least maybe colored end caps?
It's definitely something that we'd like to do. One of the things that's a little tricky is you can't, unless you're going to paint them, you don't have a ton of color options and anodize outside of like kind of the bright colors. I definitely would like to do some different colored caps or different colored bars at some point. I think for us, we've definitely stayed a little more focused kind of on the performance side rather than the customization and the looking nice side, or at least in terms of color matching. We try to make stuff look good, but there's only so many ways you can do black and gold. But yeah, it's on our radar. It's something we want to do, and we've definitely talked about maybe introducing like some white, black, red, blue options, maybe as kind of like the base color of the bar, so that your bar itself has a different color to it. Those kind of seem to be the most popular options out there. So yes, we definitely have some goals to have color options in the future.
And where can they purchase everything we've talked about? Where's the best place to go purchase them at?
The quickest and easiest place to do it is going to be right through our website. Excuse me. RamRodsArchery.com. That's where you can take the quiz. We'll set you up. Set you up with a product that fits you properly. And we also do have a few dealers in the U.S. We have a dealer locator on our website as well. You can check if there's a dealer near you. I think most of our dealers are going to be California, a couple in Texas, and there's probably a couple of others out there that I'm just not remembering off the top of my head. But there's about a dozen places, but most likely online.
Okay. We'll give a shout out for all your social medias, and we'll let you go. I know you're probably busy, so.
All right, sure. Yeah, on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and TikTok, we are at RamRods Archery.
Okay. You better get it right. She's right behind you, I guess.
Yes.
Say, I know today's the 12th. Go check out. There's a illustration y'all just put out either today or yesterday on how that tungsten moves around in there. It's got this illustration. It's like the regular bar next to the Steve Weiler edition. So I think that'd be a great one to see if I can go like grab it in a comment and put it down when we throw this out there, just to kind of show people the dynamics of what's moving around inside these bars. It's pretty cool looking, even if you're simple like me.
Yeah, we love illustrations to help break things down and make it easy to wrap your head around.
Yeah. It's just a feel thing. You got to shoot them. I mean, I've probably taken the weights off and put it on different. I'm like, what are you shooting? They're like 8 or 9 on the front. I'm like, okay, here's 9. Okay, what about the back? And I've just been switching it out, and putting it on people's bows, and they're like, hey, that's kind of. So we spend a lot of time taking weights on and off and swapping them around, but everybody's been kind of like, hey, that's definitely different. So it's kind of cool.
Appreciate that.
Well, Josh, that's all I've got. Neil, you got anything, my friend?
Good to go, man. Just wanted to give you a chance to kind of tell everybody what you got going on.
All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate it, guys. It was fun talking to you both and getting to know you more kind of face-to-face like this. If you need anything else, just let me know, and maybe we'll be able to do another one of these soon.
Sound like a plan, Josh. I appreciate your time. I know it's important.
Likewise.
Thanks.
That'll be good.